Sergio, it's so exciting to have you with. It's always great to talk to you about any subject, but this subject in particular is a fun one. This bike ride for diversity and inclusion. I happen to be at the finish line, which is the place to be at your very first one. But first, for folks who aren't familiar with it, tell us about the ride itself. This is year three, I believe, right? Tell us about the ride.
It is year three. Thanks, Michael. So the Ride for Diversity has now morphed into the Ride for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. It is a ride that was developed by myself and a good friend by the name of Rick Fisher. Rick and I had been trying to figure out how we could do something that would benefit clinical research. I had been trying to bug him to do a very long ride that goes from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Washington, D.C., down gravel roads and paths through the hills of Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia, and then obviously into D.C. And then we realized, hey, you know what? We could do this ride over 6 days and use it as a way to really start to not only raise money for ACRP's efforts to support diversity in clinical research, but also to really be a voice for the clinical trial workforce that have been really so desperate in driving diversity, equity, inclusion within the industry.
As we said, this is year three. Let's talk, though, for a second about the specific funding. So the amount of funding, I remember first year, in a good way, surprised us all how exceeding goals that we'd set. Tell me about the money you've raised and some of what's been done with that money.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So, year one, I had originally set a goal of 25,000. Everybody thought I was nuts. They told me to bring it down to 10. We very quickly passed that, so we moved it to 15, then to 20. Then we moved to 25, and we got to 25. Last year's goal was 50,000. I said, okay, let's double. We blew through the 50,000 and we raised just over $64,000. So this year's target is $100,000. The money goes to again, as I was saying, ACRP's efforts to help support diversity, equity, inclusion.
As I recall, some people get free tuition to go to ACRP's conference, for example, right?
Yep, exactly. So, the first year we didn't know what that was going to look like, right? So what we did is basically there were a group of women from Black Women in Clinical Research that wanted to attend the following year's conference, and we scholarshiped them, right? They got free access to the conference. What we've done since is we have really partnered with the Diversity Council within ACRP. So the ride, while it was a standalone kind of a quasi committee for ACRP, is now a part of the Diversity Council, and the funding goes to the Diversity Council, and then they dictate where the funding is going to be used. So it'll be a combination of scholarships as well as other programming as deemed fit by that council that is geared to, again, DEI.
You mentioned Rick Fisher, who of course is now with Velocity, I believe, and he rode with you the first 2 years, but you've got a new cast of characters this year. Who else is riding with you?
I do. Rick Fisher, unfortunately, just because of the time commitment, had to bow out this year. I'm really going to miss riding with him.
Great guy.
But yeah, he is a great guy. But this year I've got Dave Morin, who's an investigator down at Holston Medical Group and also a colleague of mine on the ACRP Board of Trustees. And then one of our great donors has been Javara, and Scott Chatterton, who is one of their BD representatives, is joining us as well. That reminds me, you had asked me where does some of the money come from, and we got sidetracked from that. So groups such as Javara, Velocity, other site networks have been great. Sponsors such as Pfizer have been wonderful donors to the cause. So while the bulk of the dollars have come from large contributions, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 each, if you take a look at the donor list, it's a lot of individuals. right? It's a lot of individuals within this industry. It's really been a grassroots effort started by Rick Fisher and I, a lot of networking on LinkedIn and sending emails to people that we know. And as we're out there talking about it on LinkedIn, people are sharing it. So 90% of the contributors, we didn't even know them. They were just people that heard about this cause and said, let's support it. It's been really wonderful to watch it grow.
And before I let you go, any fun tales on the trip? I remember that you've had some rain issues and locusts and crazy things like that. Any good stories on the from the first two rides?
Well, first I got to say, we always say what happens on the ride stays on the ride.
Fair
So I
enough.
can't get I can't get into some of the no, just joking.
That's right.
Um, it's a challenge, right? So Scott Chatterton was saying, "Hey, you know what? Maybe I want to do this ride with you. Can you talk to me a little bit about it?" And the first thing I said to him was, um, "This ride is life changing. It's life changing for me. It's life changing for people in the clinical research industry, but it truly is life changing because it is by far the most challenging thing I've ever done. To get up every morning and say, okay, I've got another 60 miles to ride. Sometimes it's almost heartbreaking, especially on day 6. But then we are oftentimes hit with challenges that were not expected. So year 1, we got hit with a swarm of cicadas. Day 3 of the ride, literally, we woke up to hundreds of thousands of cicadas just hitting us from every single direction. Last year, 5 days before the ride, about a 30-mile section of the trail that we were riding was under anywhere from 5 to 10 feet of water. So the conditions of the trail, while the standing water was gone, the mud was not. And trying to ride a bike with an additional 40 pounds of gear on it through 2, 3, 4 inches of mud is challenging, right? But we got through it, and it makes it interesting, right? Because so far, the first 2 years, the ride was different. It changed because the challenges were different. But the one thing that keeps me going through those really difficult times is I think to myself, compared to some people trying to break out in their career, whether it's in clinical research or manufacturing or finance, whatever it is, it doesn't even pale in comparison to what it's like for them. I've had it really easy in my career. I've had challenges, right? But, compared to some others, I've had it really easy. And so those challenges on the ride, I think of what it's like for them, and it keeps me going.
Fantastic, Sergio. So good to talk to you. We look forward to catching up with you after the ride, hearing more stories, the things you can tell us. I know some of it stays on the trail, and then looking forward to hearing about how much you've raised and how you're using that money to advance diversity and equity and inclusion. So good to talk to you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Michael, and thanks again for the ongoing support.